This video is sponsored by Rocket Money. More on them later. This is a Pro Tour that changed Magic forever. Pro Tour Vegas 2025, aka Pro Tour Final Fantasy, is the first PT ever to feature Standard with cards from a Universes Beyond set. Final Fantasy, the Magic set, not the long-running collection of excellent role-playing games, among other things, has accomplished the impressive feat of being the best-selling Magic the Gathering set of all time, and it did so before it even released. To say MagicCon Vegas, the gargantuan celebration of Magic that also includes this Pro Tour, was a highly anticipated event would be a pretty generous understatement. While MagicCon has typically gotten bigger and bigger, not just year over year, but event to event, Vegas was said to be the largest MagicCon of all time. As someone that's been to 3 different events now at the Las Vegas Convention Center purely for Magic, it certainly felt like it. Before the tournament even started, chatter about the set and the incoming standard and draft format had been underway. Limited seemed pretty excellent, a testament to the design team's ability to continually craft great draft environments, one where the color balance, archetypes, and gameplay all seem to be in perfect balance. Standard, a format we've seen not too long ago now, back in the frozen wasteland of Chicago, is in some ways unchanged from its previous appearances. While Matt Ness triumphed in Chicago wielding the unfiltered power of Up the Beanstalk, the Duskmourn Overlords, and Zur, the other side of the domain-dominated top 8 was the same force that has been instrumental to many players' Standard successes since this trio of red spells entered the format. While the beans were still there to be stalked, towns were somehow still not big enough despite how many cards are in Standard, and some omniscient abuelos were still being awakened. Manifold Mouse, Heartfire Hero, and Monstrous Rage were still key threats in the format that no one could choose to ignore. After all, if things had gone slightly differently in Chicago, a red player certainly could have been the champion. But to say that Standard hasn't changed at all since Chicago, even though plenty of the previous pills we've looked at are still there, ignores that multiple sets have been released since, including the hotly anticipated eponymous Final Fantasy. I mean, how much damage could a few powerful mice and a pump spell really do to a format? What if instead of that question, we simply asked, how much damage can a single card do? Well, it is one hell of a card. This is the story about how planes of the multiverse and planets of Final Fantasy collided at one of the most fascinating, lopsided, hotly debated Pro Tour metagames to ever exist. And to understand it, we're going to need to look at the brave soldiers of Bloomborough, trudge through the wilds of Eldraine, meet a precocious little wizard from FF9, and ask ourselves how much impact can a piece of 2-mana equipment not named Umezawa's Jitte really do in Standard. This is the story of Pro Tour Final Fantasy. Between buying cardboard, production expenses, and honestly just kind of life these days, I've always been interested in keeping better track of my finances. I used to budget with spreadsheets, and to be honest, I kind of hated it. That was until I found this video's sponsor, Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that allows you to manage subscriptions, lower bills, make a custom budget, and grow your savings all in one place. With Rocket Money, you can create a customized budget in seconds. The app shows where your money is going at all times and identifies top spending categories with insights on how you can stay within your budget better. So I know how much each month I can afford to splurge on new foils. Rocket Money will notify you about upcoming charges or when your balance is low to help you avoid overdrafts and late fees. Rocket Money can also identify all your subscriptions in a single list. Once you've connected your bank account, you can select the ones you don't want anymore, and kind of like casting a spell, Rocket Money may be able to help you cancel with just a few taps. To save more and spend less, join the over 5 million members using Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/hungry or click the link in the description to get started for free. That's rocketmoney.com/hungry. Thanks again to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video. It's June 2025 in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the Pro Tour is once again gracing the desert alongside other Magic festivities. And while the event and most recent set might bear the name of the legendary Japanese video game series, things have changed since Aether and the last Standard Pro Tour. Between now and then, another beloved plane has been revisited, as we return to Tarkir for the excellently well-received third part of the Khans trilogy, Tarkir Dragonstorm. Among the beautiful-looking dragon leaders of the clans of Tarkir, some more sweet commander decks, and enough shiny new dragons to make Brian Kibler the happiest person on Earth, there is one card in particular that starts to make waves in the competitive Magic community, Cori-Steel Cutter. To some, this might look like just a simple piece of equipment. To others, this looks like a monastery mentor that costs 1 less mana. And if we've learned anything from decades of Magic cards getting made, it's that making things cheaper usually makes them a lot better. Don't be fooled by the stats this piece of equipment grant, or the fact that it auto-equips to the token, both of which are excellent traits, or even the fact that it has Flurry, which looks like a gated version of Monastery Mentor's token generation. After all, you can only do this once per turn. Just the fact that this triggers off of itself as the first spell and any other spell, not just a non-creature spell, means it's incredibly efficient at generating hordes of angry monks, and because those tokens, like the Mentor the card is an homage to from the original Khan's block, also have prowess, those same cards that help you trigger the Steel Cutter over and over again also pump your little tokens to ludicrous levels, all of which combine to end games in seconds. I don't think I can overstate this. Prowess is one of the most powerful evergreen keywords ever made in Magic, so anytime a source of cheap prowess creatures is made available, you best believe people are going to try and build around them. Stormchaser's Talent, another way to get a cheap prowess token, had already proven itself to be a powerhouse alongside This Town Ain't Big Enough, among other things, with various iterations of Pixie doing well at the last Pro Tour despite not being able to break through into the top 8. And if Stormchaser's Talent is good enough, surely Steel Cutter is even better. Yeah, the card's good. It's really, really good. The question quickly changes from will we see Cori-Steel Cutter at the Pro Tour to how much Cori-Steel Cutter. The archetype solidifies pretty quickly, with Izzet being the best color combination for the Monk machine, which tracks because Izzet is the now classic color combo for Spellslinger decks, and Flurry reads a lot like other Spellslinger cards. Having natural access to red also means the deck gravitates to the other best red card in the format. I'll remind you, even though Aether Drift ended up being all about domain once the dust settled, the other most prominent decks were the ones using the best aggressive card in the format, Monstrous Rage. While Heartfire Hero, Manifold Mouse, and all their little Bloomburrow friends do deserve a mention here too, I'd argue the single most powerful effect these decks have access to is the 1-mana pump spell. Monstrous Rage just does it all. It gives trample, which makes blocking feel pretty useless, it leaves a buff on the unit permanently with the roll token, so your creature is a little bit bigger indefinitely, and it gives you a temporary boost right where the aggressive decks want it, the attack side of your creature's stat lines. An aggro-leaning but still shockingly well-rounded spell that turns your average draws and units into game-ending monsters, all for the bargain price of 1 mana. Even though Monstrous Rage has been the poster child of red aggro decks since its release, there's no reason a more combo-y tempo-y deck like Izzet Prowess can't use it either. Not to mention that your creatures all having prowess means they get even more natural benefit from wanting to play the best non-creature spells in your colors. It feels bad enough that arguably the best red instant got to pair up with the new best red equipment, but combine this with Stormchaser's Talent, the cheap blue cantrips like Sleight of Hand and Opt, and cheap interaction like Torch the Tower, and maybe Bloomburrow's true sleeper uncommon Into the Floodmaw, this deck can seemingly do everything. I even forgot to mention Stock Up, which is clearly the best uncommon if not the best overall card from Aether Drift, which they also get to play. A sorcery which lets the deck refuel with their 2 best cards in the top 5 and still trigger Prowess and Steel Cutter along the way. This card is good enough for Vintage, so you best believe it's good enough for Standard. In some ways, Izzet Prowess just seems like a soup of all the best cards in their colors and potentially in the format, but like a good meal, all the elements work together in brutal harmony. So as the Standard portion of the Pro Tour begins, how many people are on Izzet Steel Cutter? Thanks to the trusty Frank Carsten, who still managed to post his metagame breakdown for the Pro Tour despite also preparing for the first ever Lorcana World Championships that same week, we know the answer to this question. Just take a moment to let this sink in. 42% of the field is on Izzet Prowess. As far as I know, Affinity never reached these heights in their heyday. According to Frank's article, this is far and away the largest metagame share an archetype has ever had since the return of the Pro Tour in 2023, beating the former champ of this time by more than 10%, as the Esper midrange deck's share of 31% at Pro Tour Thunder Junction couldn't keep their top spot forever. While I can't say for sure that an earlier Pro Tour, I'm looking at you Pro Tour Rebels, didn't have a more polarized metagame by the numbers, at least in the modern era of the PT, this is a ridiculous number of people on a single archetype, all vying for their shot at Pro Tour Champion using the hot new artifact. While this is a historic number for any Pro Tour, what's more fascinating to me isn't just how many people are trying to use the good Izzet cards, it's how every other deck has reacted to its presence. Prowess isn't just the deck to beat, it's front and center of a Battle Royale circle, and everyone is out to get it. Azorius Omniscience, the powerful Abuelo's Awakening-fueled combo deck that cheats an Omniscience into play while moonlighting as Azorius control, is the next most popular choice, and with good reason. Not only is a 4-mana Omniscience a pretty good deal, but being blue-white gives you access to Temporary Lockdown, one of the best sweepers in the format, arguably the best in a format full of powerful cheap permanents. Last Pro Tour, Lockdown was a necessary evil against the Gruul and Mono Red decks for the lumbering Domain Overlord decks. Azorius gets some natural points in that matchup too, which is good, but Lockdown dealing with not only the tokens and the Swift Spears of the world, but also the Stormchaser's Talents, the Steel Cutters, and their little monk friends, made this a best-in-class answer to the Izzet shenanigans. It's no wonder it's the second most popular deck at this Pro Tour, and it doesn't hurt that you also get to play Stock Up. There's even a small number of straight Azorius and Jeskai control builds in the meta breakdown who clearly decided that the available tools were good enough even if you eschewed the combo. Speaking of control, Domain Overlords is back. Undeterred by the new blue decks on the block and looking to leverage the same beans that crowned Matt as a PT champ earlier this year. But even those decks are playing main deck prowess hate. High Noon is a common 4-of among these multicolor control decks because it turns out if you can't cast more than one spell in a turn, you can't trigger Flurry. And if you can't get the Monk Madness going, then Steel Cutter looks a lot worse. Rounding out the metagame are decks like Jund and Golgari Roots, which turn out to be pretty lethal against prowess if they get going, because going wide is seen as a valuable strategy against those decks, and Roots does some ludicrous combolicious things when its engine is rolling. The intentional glaring omission from this analysis though is the other monstrous rage deck in the format, also arguably the best one, Mono Red. Tracing at least as far back as the 2024 World Championships at the previous MagicCon Vegas around the release of Duskmourn, the combination of Heart by a Hero and Monstrous Rage has been a consistent force at the Pro Tour. At that World Championship, 2 of the 8 competitors made it to Sunday with this combo. A few months later in Chicago, 3 players were playing on Sunday with the good red cards. So coming into this Pro Tour, it's another expected deck and the 3rd most played archetype in Vegas behind the Omniscience decks. They've also adapted to the incoming threat of the Steel Cutter decks, not playing the impressive equipment themselves because they don't have enough non-creatures to fuel prowess despite how good Monstrous Rage is, but certainly respecting it with main deck Magebane Lizard, which seems like the perfect antidote to the game plan of the prowess decks. Given that prowess wants to win by playing lots of spells in a turn, punishing them progressively for each one makes a lot of sense. Not only did Magebane Lizard play into Mono Red's general game plan of dealing as much damage as possible as quickly as possible, but any subsequent lizards just compounded how effective they were in the matchup, often getting to points where the prowess players ended up locked under the lizards, unable to play any more non-creature spells. And a lot of the successful Mono Red list from the weekend had 3 to 4 main deck copies of the anti-wizard lizard in them. What's most amusing to me though isn't just that every single deck that wasn't prowess brought specific hate to beat them, but that even the prowess decks had to pack a lot of punch for the mirror. Cards like Drakecatcher that could compound board states and let you outwiden even the funkiest of monk token boards became staple across many lists. An almost endless battle of how mid-range do I want to go waged across the entire weekend, as the prowess players had to figure out how much of the mirror they needed to tech for. Generally, if you go a bit bigger than similar decks, you're going to be in a better spot against decks like yours, but you'll give up some percentage points to other faster decks or decks on the other end that don't care about you going a little bigger because they're trying to go much bigger. Think something like Domain Overlords. But when 40+% of the field includes prowess of some kind, it seems like you'll need to bring heat for the mirror match, which is a shame because everyone else is also trying to beat you and you only have so many slots in your main deck and sideboard to work with. Even though Izzet prowess made up most of the field, the number of different takes on the archetype varied wildly. Some of the decks wanted more mid-range pieces and 3-drops to both go bigger in the mirror and help hedge against the power of temporary lockdown. Others went for maximum power and played Monastery Swiftspear in numbers varying from 2 to 4 copies. Some teams decided not to play Swiftspear at all. But by far the most contentious addition or omission to the deck, depending on what team you were on, was also the most powerful, exciting card from the Final Fantasy set. The mythic, glowy-eyed 3-drop who was looking to do more than just terrorize some commander tables, the precious boy Vivi Ornitier. I mean, if you were trying to dodge temporary lockdown and find a threat to go bigger than the other prowess decks with, I don't know if there's a scarier card than Vivi. While the cute little mage was a bit slow against some of the faster decks, there was no card more terrifying to let a player untap with than Vivi, and opinions on how good this card actually was varied massively across all of the professional teams. Some teams thought it was main deckable up to the max copies, some thought only a few, some thought sideboard only, and some thought it was just straight garbage, a trap that wasn't good enough with how efficient and low to the ground prowess already was. So the scene is set and the games begin, with all manner of questions still left unanswered. Will the monstrous mice finally break through with a win? Did the revisit to Tarkir create a new most broken card to beat? Does the quiet wizard from Final Fantasy have what it takes to topple some of the strongest red cards Magic has ever seen? And maybe more importantly, are we going to see any deck breakthrough that doesn't have mountains in it? Between Mono Red and prowess, the metagame certainly seems to be defined by red spells, but Azorius Omniscience is trying to be the wedge that drives between the 2 other main players of the metagame. That's not all the standard format has to offer though. As mentioned previously, Domain is still kicking, the odd Golgari Beanstalk self-mill decks have a few dedicated pilots at the PT, and both Golgari and Jund are representing the powerful combo engine Insidious Roots, and both of these archetypes do pretty well into prowess, because making big or many things cheaply turns out to be pretty good against a deck that is mostly just a creature deck at the end of the day, albeit a very powerful one. While prowess can absolutely combo kill you dead on turn 3 or 4 some games, they still need creatures to do the swinging at the end of the day, especially if they can't find a monstrous rage. Miraculously, even as the final few rounds of the Pro Tour are being played, there are decks that aren't playing Monstrous Rage still in contention. In round 14, Eli Cassis is still battling with Golgari Roots in top 8 contention. Archdoda is the lone Omniscience player fighting for a slot in round 16, and there's even a Domain player still playing for top 8 in round 15. But alas, once the dust has finally settled for the second Pro Tour of the 2025 season, maybe the funniest thing of all time has happened. While personally I was hoping for Steel Cutter to finally break the mythical barrier of being a 4-ob in every deck and have the full 32 copies in top 8, something I'm pretty sure has never happened to any Magic card before, instead we got something better. Instead of 5 or 6 copies of Prowess like we've seen in similarly skewed metagames, we got a perfect split. Exactly 4 mono red and 4 Is It Prowess decks would be playing for the title on Sunday. In some ways, not exactly what you'd expect given the once again unprecedented 42% meta share, but this is arguably both much rarer and even funnier. That the big metagame elephant in the room could only be challenged by one of the older strategies on the Pro Tour: play mountains, attack face, and lightning burst go sky. To make this unique Pro Tour top 8 even more amusing though, not only are the weekend's best performing and well represented archetypes through, but they're split evenly across the bracket as well. And this is a stacked top 8. Tony Portolan has taken his top 16 finish from the last PT in Chicago and turned it into a top 8. Old school legend David Root is back after his team's Pro Tour win alongside Gabriel Nassif and Gab Sang more than 20 years ago. Yu Chen Liu is in his second top 8 in as many events after exiting PT 8th Drift in the semis, and so is Ian Robb, also making back-to-back top 8s, as Ian Robb has now played the same number of Pro Tours that he has made top 8 in, both of them. With how the seeding happened to pan out, which is based purely on how players finished in the Swiss, Mono Red sits on one side of the bracket and Is It Prowess lies on the other. Players are going to only play mirror matches until the finals, which is the only time we're going to see Prowess take on Mono Red for all the marbles. Which begs the question, which player is going to represent their respective deck? On the Prowess side of the equation, we have young superstar and Pokemon TCG player Ian Robb, who might be more famous in Pokemon for getting disqualified in the top 4 than anything else, but the kid can clearly play cards. Robb has played Magic for a little while, but he has only started competing at the game's highest level recently, and I do mean recently. He has played in 2 Pro Tours so far, including this one, which he qualified for by top 8ing in Chicago, squeaking through on tiebreakers before ultimately losing to some below average draws from his mono red deck and the indomitable aura of Matt Nass. It's hard enough to make back-to-back Pro Tour top 8, let alone do so twice in as many events. Not even Kai Bude top 8'd 100% of the Pro Tours he played in, and so far so good for Ian. On the mono red side is the ever-smiling Ken Yukihiro, who casually has 4 times as many top 8s as Ian does, although he's probably been top 8ing Pro Tours longer than Ian has been alive. Ken is generally known for being quite the spicy brewer and pilot, and while mono red isn't exactly that, it's certainly hot this weekend, and he's out to prove he's the best mono red player in the world by being the only red player at the event left with a chance to win the whole thing. And Ken's games have been masterclasses all weekend long. Probably my favorite moment of his from the weekend came in Game 2 during his semi-final slugfest against Yu Chen Liu. Ken at 7 attacks with both his copies of Screaming Nemesis, and Liu blocks with a Heart by a Hero to do a single point of damage upstairs. Against the 2 powerful 3-drops, Yu Chen Liu knows he has to try and close the game out and thinks he's found the angle to do so. After untapping, his own Nemesis rumbles in alongside his Soulstone Sanctuary, forcing some blocks out of Ken, who's going to win on the crackback easily if he gets to untap. Still in combat, but after damage, as the Nemesis steals 1 from its running with a Magebane Lizard, Ken is at 5, and Yu Chen Liu fires off a Witchstalker Frenzy on his own Screaming Nemesis. This has become a pretty standard way for mono red to combo finish people, as the 5 damage takes out the Nemesis, but lets you redirect it somewhere else thanks to its ability, which is usually your opponent's face. What you didn't see but Ken saw immediately was that with the soon-to-be lethal Witchstalker Frenzy on the stack, he could burst lightning the Nemesis for 2, still take some splash damage, but kill off the Nemesis to fizzle the Frenzy and just barely survive the game. An incredible heads-up play from Yukihiro that ends up netting him a berth in the Pro Tour Finals, as this series goes all the way to Game 5. Ian, on the other hand, has shown that not only is he fully aware of how powerful and capable the best deck in the format is, but he's come prepared for the mirror, losing to it only once all tournament. Putting full faith in Vivi by running 4 copies in his main deck, Ian Robb has been unstoppable this event, being the first player to clinch top 8. Although he's not the first seed, he certainly feels better than his last top 8 where he snuck in at 8th. Ian's quarterfinal against Christian Baker delivered a particularly spicy sequence, where despite being hellbent and staring down a Steel Cutter and a Vivi with 3 counters on it, a position you're not supposed to do any winning from, as usually the player that gets to untap with Vivi wins shortly after. But Ian plays on and peels a Drake Catcher at 8 life, popping it into play and just waiting to see what happens if he's allowed to get one more draw step. Well, his first draw is pretty good, as it's an opt to trigger the Hatcher's prowess and get another card. This leads into another opt, which leads into a Sleight of Hand, into a Monstrous Rage that tramples over the poor little Monk token for 6 damage and 6 incubation counters, enough to make 2 Drakes with and make this previously hopeless game actually winnable. Christian Baker untaps and equips Vivi with his Cori-Steel Cutter, something that I feel like should trigger an automatic game win, and Rob casually drops down to 1 life after not blocking with the now trampling Vivi with his Drake Hatcher. All Baker needs is 1 more spell, and a Vivi ping will finish this game off even though he's now racing the 2/2 Drakes. Instead, Baker bricks off and Ian Robb steals a game in the most Is It Prowess fashion ever, by starting a turn with a single prowess creature and chaining spells into a monstrous rage to win the game at 1 life.
Hacker.
Brick? Oh, no! Oh no! Oh no!
Oh, sorry.
Oh, this is gross.
Draw? Yep.
Yep, dead. Oh, that's so gross. Ian Robb. Oh man, is gonna win game number 2.
So, an American youngster on one of the hottest opening streaks we've ever seen in competitive Magic versus one of Japan's most experienced gamers that has been absolutely torching people with mono red. Finally, we'll play something other than a mirror match in this top 8, and it'll decide who is the champion of Pro Tour Final Fantasy. Even though both players only have 7 Final Fantasy cards between them, up from the 6 8th cards from Chicago's finals, it just seems like the title set for the Pro Tour can't catch a break in Standard. At least Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3 was accurately named. Game 1 sees Ken Yukihiro on the play, something that is very valuable in this matchup, and immediately starts beating down as Ian Robb finds a Drake Hatcher to play on turn 2 after playing a Surveil land on turn 1. Drake Hatcher has been one of Ian's best cards all weekend, especially in the Prowess Mirror, where Monstrous Rage can give you easy access to 1 or 2 Drake tokens at a time, all while pushing through damage and gumming up the ground. Hatcher would work similarly here if Ian can get it going, but he's already down to 10 versus the Emberheart Challenger, Hired Claw, and the ever-pesky Manifold Mouse. Emberheart's Valiant trigger, however, finds the real juice as Monstrous Rage is revealed and cast, effectively ending game 1 on the spot as Ken deploys a post-combat Magebane Lizard, locking Ian out from playing many more spells for the rest of this game with how low his life total is. Ian's particular bit of tech of Vivi plus Wild Ride gives some hope for a big burst of mana to turn the game around with, but being locked under the Lizard with very little left means Ian just explodes. Game 2 sees another Drake Hatcher dispatched by Ken's Singleton Lightning Strike, and Ian's draw is once again a little clunky, with no way to interact with Ken's early creatures. While Double Steel Cutter looks like it might be able to turn the corner, Ken's consistent pressure has left Rob with only 11 life to play with by turn 4. After Ian uses his own Monstrous Rage to push through damage with an Otter token, Ken knows the coast is clear to keep on attacking, and he yeets his creatures into the red zone to end the game despite Ian having 2 monks to block with. As we move into sideboarded games though, it's already pretty clear that Ken has a huge advantage in this matchup, and in my opinion it's not even because Prowess is incapable of beating mono red, it's that Ken has prepared so well for the event's most notable target. See, Ian has been in the just go a bit bigger camp of Is It Prowess decks this weekend, between his 3 main deck Drake Hatchers and 4 main deck VVs, and it's hard to argue with that not being the correct call. Ian had to play multiple Prowess mirrors this tournament, including 2 best of 5s to even get to this final. The problem is that Ken is so prepared for these cards, even choosing to run the full 4 copies of Twin Moor Stormbrood main deck, which you're really only playing for the Omen half Charring Bite. Consistently, Ian's VVs and Hatchers get popped before they can muster any real value, all while Ken just beats down with the good red cards like he's done all weekend. All this without mentioning that Ken even has 3 main deck Magebane Lizards specifically for this matchup, and most of Ian's main deck cards are here to fight the mirror. It seems like Prowess this tournament just kind of ended up eating itself with that giant meta share, and Ken being up 2-0 means the deck that's still good but just on the outskirts of everyone's crosshairs might have actually been the best choice to win the PT. Game 3 is set to be a hot one though, and initially not in a good way. Ian begins the game by cosplaying mono blue Prowess, as he only has islands to start the game with. He does finally find a red source as his 4th land drop to unlock the VV and the Cori-Steel Cutter in his hand, playing out the VV with no way to pump it. Turns out that probably doesn't matter anyway, as Charring Bite dispatches the 0-3 Wizard, and Ian is left with just a Steel Cutter and 2 Otter tokens to work with, as Yukihiro swings in for some damage. He knows he needs to get the game over with before those monks start flooding the board. Finding a second spell pumps up Ian's Prowess tokens to pretty respectable heights, and this is a glimpse into why you have to get games over quickly. Prowess does not mess around when it comes to sinking your life total to 0, and Ken chump blocks dropping to 10. Ian has been the aggressor so often with his Prowess deck this weekend, and he knows just how explosive his deck can be. With a Wild Ride left in hand, if he can find a Monstrous Rage or a few more spells off of maybe a stock up to pump his board again, he's going to get to play at least 1 more game here and begin his comeback. With Ken being forced to suplex the Steel Cutter and leaving back a blocker, it does seem like Ian might have finally turned this game around if he can just draw another spell. Instead, he finds a mountain, levels up his Storm Chaser's talent to level 2 to put a sleight of hand back in hand, and tries to set up to win the next turn as Ken drops to 6 life from an Otter and a Monk. And it's at this point we have to pause, because this micro decision might end up being the most impactful of this entire finals. With Ken at 6 and Ian at 5, both players are dangerously close to keeling over. If Ian wins, he'll keep his dream alive of being a Pro Tour champion, and if Ken wins, he'll finally win a PT after 7 previous attempts in the top 8. Both players are low, but Ian's only real way to push damage over the top is with Monstrous Rage, which he doesn't currently have. Because Ken is playing mono red though, he's got the all-reliable backup plan ready. Just go face. The problem is that there's not many burn spells in his deck that work when Ian's at 5. Lightning Strike only does 3, and even though the Hired Claw Ken just played can deal 1 to the face for free, Full Life would still be just out of reach. Burst Lightning would do it if you could kick it, but Ken only has 3 lands, so getting to 5 to power up your spell isn't going to happen either. Yukihiro though happens to have drawn maybe the perfect card here, his Singleton Self-Destruct. This Final Fantasy flavored fling is particularly potent with Hot by a Hero, as it targets your mouse, pumping it up before flinging damage equal to its power at any target. Self-Destruct, as the name implies, also has the creature deal the same damage to itself, and when Hot by a Hero dies, it deals damage to all opponents equal to its power. If we're doing the math here, 2 power getting flung, plus 2 power from the dies trigger adds up to a very convenient 4. All for the low enough price of just 2 mana. A single Final Fantasy card is all that stands between Ken Yukihiro and Pro Tour immortality. The problem is that Ian has an Unable to Scream. Not the best removal spell, as it doesn't actually take the blocker off the board, but removing all the abilities is highly relevant here, when both Hired Claw and Heart by Hero need to have text on them in order for Ken's only available line to work. So a 2 in 3 chance to shut off Ken's best avenue to victory this game, Ian just has to enchant any creature but the Emberheart Challenger. Instead, Ian does lock down the Challenger to prevent Ken from stringing more cards together and holds back his tokens to block, trying to sling enough spells with his last remaining prowess creature to get through Ken's final 6 points of life. Between the Wild Ride and the Sleight of Hand, if Ian finds something to get his Otter through, he will do more than enough damage here. But Ken finding land number 4 means all he has to do is lie in wait. Both players are down to single-digit life, both players are left with exactly 1 card in hand, and as Ian Robb goes for what he feels is a pretty insulated victory, finding an Into the Floodmaw to remove the only blocker, Ken flips over the final card in his hand. His Self-Destruct from Final Fantasy V, the same series that bears the name of this event, the same game that happens to be on Ken's shirt, and his favorite game in the series. Before I show you the final moment of Pro Tour Final Fantasy, I want to remind you of something. This event has been a movie, a ridiculous looking metagame, an even more polarizing top 8, and a host of different decks all trying to combat Cori-Steel Cutter, just barely falling short near the end of the Swiss. This Pro Tour is easy to malign for what you might think Universes Beyond does to the game, or maybe for how dumb it feels to have one deck have more than 40% meta share. It's easy to cry out and bash what the game has become because powerful cards are quote-unquote ruining Magic, but I've watched basically every round from this event and certainly every round from this top 8, and even this gallery of mirror matches has contained intricate, fascinating Magic from the best players in the world. I think people are quick to jump on the drama and turn up the outrage because it's an easy way to get attention, but the soul of the Pro Tour hasn't changed since it began in 1996, and if you need any more proof of that, just watch Ken Yukihiro's face as he becomes a Pro Tour champion for the first time ever.
And Ken Yukihiro does 2 damage to Ian Robb to become a Pro Tour champion. Unbelievable from Ken Yukihiro as he breaks down. This is the culmination of a career of hard work for Ken Yukihiro, and you can see it on his face.
7th time is the charm. This is Ken Yukihiro's 7th top finish, and this is his first Pro Tour title.
What a moment for Ken. He's been working towards this goal for so long.
It means a lot.
Oh.
You should be happy. I don't want you to not be unhappy. It's... Congratulations, I'm so happy for you. Thank you.
At the end of the day, we are all Ken Yukihiro, just a gamer entranced by the complexity, strategy, and beauty of Magic the Gathering, who just wants to feel the joy of finding a sweet play one more time. Regardless of the stage or the stakes, try not to forget that next time you feel like complaining, instead of just taking a step back and enjoying the beautiful game we have. Pro Tour Final Fantasy will forever have a fascinating place in Magic history, and in fairness to the complainers, it seems as though the standard metagame we'd seen play out throughout 2025 maybe also wasn't the healthiest. That or Wizards just really wanted to shake things up because a little over a week later, a Bandai-restricted announcement dropped that nuked a record 7 cards from standard, including Monstrous Rage, Heart by a Hero, and Up the Beanstalk, 3 cards that had won the last 2 standard Pro Tours as 4-ofs. Cori-Steel Cutter also got the chop, proving that even though it didn't win the event, it certainly was just as busted as everyone thought it was. Standard is refreshed, interesting, and very different since the bans, and I've personally been enjoying it. Between the bans and the upcoming rotation, it's not a bad time to pick up the 60 card classic and maybe jam some Final Fantasy cards. Just watch out for Vivi and his big bowl of soup. PVDDR was onto something there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to get notified about more videos like this, you should tap that subscribe button too. Get in the comments and let me know your thoughts on the standard bans and this one-of-a-kind Pro Tour Top 8. And lastly, if you want to support the channel more directly, you can do so via Patreon, where you can get sneak peeks at future video ideas, contribute to the monthly mailbag, and join the Patreon exclusive Discord. You can also donate via coffee if you're looking for another way to help the channel. All these links are in the description below. And if you like the fact that Cori-Steel Cutter ate a standard ban at breakneck speed, you'll probably like this video too.